Hi students, Catherine Robertson here in summer mode. Hopefully you are having a wonderful hot July here in Erie, PA. Okay, so this week if you haven't turned your homework in for week 4, please do so by the end of the day today so that you might receive full credit. The midterm, which is posted, make sure that you turn that into me by Friday at midnight in order to receive full credit for that, or for full credit for your answers. If you do have any issues, concerns, comments, please reach out to me via text or via email. 814-490-6473 is my phone. My email, crobertson@ec3pa.org. All right, so this week we are looking at chapters 9 and 10. And if you go into Blackboard, you will see week 5 listed. And under week 5, there are 2 sets of PowerPoints. So the reading for week 5 is chapters 9 and 10. I would suggest doing one chapter at a time. It just is easier, but you can do it however you'd like. So chapter 9 starts to talk a little bit about the financial responsibilities of a company and how a company acquires funds, and then how they utilize those funds in an efficient and effective manner within the company. So once you read chapter 9, do a quick review then, or look at the PowerPoint first and then read the chapter, whichever you prefer. And so what chapter 9 is going to do is talk a little bit about how companies acquire, especially larger companies, but you can even apply this to smaller companies, and entrepreneurs can use some of these tactics as well. And so how companies acquire funds. And then the other area that chapter 9 looks at is the idea of financial management, and talking about how some companies that are larger have whole departments that are finance departments that manage the coming and going of money. Whereas if you are a small company, you might be, as the owner or as the head of human resources or as a co-owner, working on utilizing funds in an efficient manner. So one of the things that we want to look at is this idea of risk and return trade-off. So when you look at, I believe it's slide 6 in the PowerPoint, talking about things that are riskier, whether we are getting into a new market, whether we are doing research and development into a new product, whether we are starting a new business line, any of those things, whether we are expanding, right? The larger the risk, so the more uncertainty that's involved, the larger the return might be, right? And so this is true for the stock market as well. So some of those risky investments are where the big payouts are. So things that are low risk, that are likely to have little uncertainty, so they're pretty certain as to how they're going to go. Markets maybe that are established, right, that you could get into, that have a clear set of parameters. If the parameters are clear, right, if the guidelines or if the goal lines or the sidelines, if things are clear, if it's a finite situation where you can assess the different components of a marketplace, for example, it's low risk, right? But the idea that it's low risk means that there's a lot of known variables. And if there's a lot of known variables, it means that there's not going to be much return. A lot of the return in that market has already been gobbled up, really, by other businesses. And so when we think about the idea of risk return, it's a very important component about how we invest as a company, right? And, the more that we can uncover uncertainty, the better it is for us, right? And the more that we can predict what's going to happen. So those types of things are important, and things that are talked about in chapter 9. And just to start considering some of those things, right? Part of what we do in the business department here, and in a lot of your college courses, is getting you, not only learning specific nuts and bolts, right? But getting you to think outside the box and think about different instances, right, that you might be involved in, and how you might handle those, and to develop critical thinking skills and assessment skills that you can rely on, right, in a larger sense. So when you're taking this class, not only are you learning specific concepts and specific terms and specific ideas, right, you're also starting to think about how all the pieces fit together, right, in a larger sense and in a more philosophical sense, right? So that's also what we're doing here. if you haven't noticed, right? I'm sneaking that in. All right, so let me start to talk a little bit about some of the different ratios. Liquidity. So liquidity is how readily a asset can be turned into cash, right? And so typically then when we're talking about liquidity, items that are easy basically to turn into cash or to sell have a high level of liquidity, meaning you could convert them if you needed cash, right? Things that are not very liquid are things like land. Land, you need to find a very specific buyer, and the price is a market price, right? Buildings are not very liquid. So if you're a company that owns a bunch of buildings, your liquidity is not that high. You can't just sell those buildings, right? If you have a safe full of cash in the back, right, at your company, you are a highly liquid company. You can just bring some cash out and bring it to the table, right? And so we look at firms sometimes, are they able to, if they needed to come up with some cash, could they do it quickly, right? In times, and we saw this kind of accelerated when COVID hit. Companies that had low liquidity ratios that couldn't produce cash on their own if they were in a pinch were companies that felt a lot of trouble when COVID hit because there was a lot of money stopped coming in, right, when the economy shut down. And companies that had more liquidity or able to convert some things quickly into cash were able to stay afloat longer when the markets or when the economy came to a screeching halt, right? So look through some of these ratios, and you don't have to memorize these ratios, but they give you snapshots, right? These financial ratios, they tell us, like if you were to go to the doctor for a checkup, right? They do some things, they check your blood pressure, they listen to your heart. Sometimes you get blood work done. If you get blood work done, they look at your cholesterol levels, they look at, your iron levels, they look at white blood cells, red blood cells, some basic things to get an idea, right? They look at a few basic things to get an idea, a picture of your health. And so that's what these ratios are. They really give, either management or outside investors or other companies, really, but banks, they give you a snapshot of a company and let you know, okay, and let you compare a company against other companies, whether it's internal, whether you work for that company, or maybe it's external, you want to invest in that company, right? Or you're another company and you're wondering about a company, how well they're doing. You can look at, kind of their health checkup. And that's what these ratios really do. They give us somewhat of a picture of a company. This chapter 9 also talks a little bit about budgeting and some ideas as to how companies get loans, things like commercial paper, short-term promissory notes. So large corporations have a whole host of items that they are able to access if they were to need financing. Capital structure, thinking about financial leverage, right? So if a company has a lot of debt, then that means they are highly leveraged, meaning they have a lot of people that have stake in that company that could really call it in, right? So look through the pros and cons of financing. And so this chapter really is, there's a lot in this chapter, and it talks about net present value in this chapter, and the idea of, a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow because you can invest it, right? So look at the summary slides, and they will give you an idea of the key things that I want you to take away from chapter 9. And it really ties a lot to larger companies and organizations. And then chapter 10, when you click through, so I would say go through chapter 9, go through the PowerPoint, and then go through the homework for chapter 9 would be the easiest route. And then chapter 10 starts to talk about financial markets, one of my favorite chapters. Let's see. So chapter 10, if you go through the same idea, you can either go through the PowerPoint first, or you can go through the chapter and then do a review through the PowerPoint. It talks a little bit about savings and loans, credit unions, how they're similar. There's a bunch of different types of institutions that are non-investing. The key that I want you to take away from here is look at some of the laws that are governing our financial markets, right? And what we see is the Banking Act, Securities Act of 33. This is after the Great Depression, right? So after the big crash of the market, there weren't really laws into place, and that's why we had the crash, right? So now we do have some laws and regulations into place to help prevent, everybody losing their money at banks closing. The Securities and Exchange Commission came into play, which basically does a checklist of companies before they join and checks companies out really well over a few year process before they're able to go public and join the stock market for you and I to invest in, right? And so they are a watchdog, the Securities and Exchange Commission. They were not in place before the Great Depression happened and before the crash happened of 29. And so these, you will see that some of these acts, and these are just the highlights, right? So just have an idea of when, so most recently we had the Financial Services Modernization Act of 99 and Sarbanes-Oxley of 2002. Sarbanes-Oxley is really a big takeaway that put a lot of change in this modern day into stricter regulations and for financial statements, so companies couldn't, and really a lot of it came out of some of the, like the Enron scandal, where there was a lot of hidden money in accounting, and really too also GE in the 90s was what we call cooking the books, moving things around in their accounting, and accounting is another language somewhat, right? So companies can hide stuff in their accounting if they really want to, and so we tighten those reins a little bit with Sarbanes-Oxley. Looking at stock, common stock, preferred stock, and bonds. So take a look at those. Let's see what else. Some rights relating to. So look at bonds as well. Bonds are more secure. And we talked about that risk-return trade-off, right? So bonds are government-backed typically. Companies can sell bonds too, but the government likes to issue bonds, whether it's at the state, federal, or even local level. And those bonds, they have a low return, right? But you're pretty much guaranteed that return. Versus in the stock market, you're not really guaranteed anything, right? What else is important about this chapter that I'd like for you? A secondary market, so this is pretty much anywhere stocks are traded, right? Other than the initial public offering of the IPO, everything that we see that's a stock on the stock market is already been bought and sold once, which makes it a secondary market. Orders, types of orders when buying and selling. If any of you have an E-Trade account or a similar type account, you can go in there and put on a market order, which basically says as soon as you are able to buy these 20 shares I want you to buy, go ahead and buy them at whatever price, current market price. A limit order can either let you buy or sell stocks that you have interest in. So if you have a sell limit order, right, if a stock goes to a certain height, it will automatically sell it, right? So you can put that in as an order. It will automatically sell it for you. Conversely, if a stock goes down to a certain level, like drops down, you may have a limit order in that says, buy me 100 shares. If Apple drops to a certain level, I want 100 shares of Apple, right? You can build that in so it's electronic, right? Different than it was, 20, 30 years ago. You can do this on your own, self-service through E-Trade accounts and Charles Schwab, those types of accounts. Different types of investing, right? Strategies for investing in securities, investing for income, market timing. These strategies are very important. So if you're thinking about finance, thinking about your own investing, or you're thinking about maybe you want to go into finance and help others, you have to consider what people or companies, why they go into investing, right? And so, for example, some people or companies might go into investing for income, right? So that would mean that they need regular checks sent to them, right? So whether it's dividends or bonds that generate steady income, that would be investing for income. Some people are traders, that's market timing. Some people get in the market for growth strategies, right? It's the reason behind it. Just like you all have different reasons why you were coming back to school. And so, but you're all here, right? So investing, it's like everyone's investing, but they have different reasons behind it. Buying and holding stocks. Some people just like to buy stocks for the future and hold stocks to have a portfolio, right? So just different options there. The Dow Jones. So most of you or all of you picked a company, right? And your company publicly traded is on the stock market. It's probably in the Dow. I think they're all in the Dow, or if not in Standard & Poor's 500. And so there are a few other major stock indices across the globe. We look at the Wilshire 5000. Which is 5,000 companies in the U.S. And basically what happens is companies fit a certain parameter, and then it looks at it kind of hones in on certain companies, right? And so it gives you a picture, just like the Dow Jones gives us a picture of 30 of the, largest and really most successful right now companies in this country, right? And how are they doing? Are their stocks moving upward or their stocks moving down, right? So we try to look at that as a picture of the market overall. Is it? Well, not necessarily, but at least when we say, oh, the Dow is up or the Dow is down, it's those companies, whether they are overall up or overall down. And really that gives us a snapshot of what how our economy is doing overall, if you're wondering how that kind of plays out. So there are these indices, right? So groupings of companies, the Nikkei 225, the FTSE 100, stock prices of 100 of the largest and most actively traded companies in London at the London Stock Exchange. So just some different price indices across the globe. All right, so that is chapter 10 when you study markets. Now I do have their homework for both of these chapters. I have 2 short videos. There's a stock market video there for you to view a little bit about the stocks, and then also Warren Buffett, famous investor, how to invest for beginners. So thinking about how, some investment strategies there. So both of these are really good videos. They are for this chapter. So chapters 9 and 10, the 9 and 10 homework. There was no discussion this week. And these items are due next Wednesday. What do I have on there next Wednesday? Since I'm posting them Wednesday by midnight, 7:26. And this is week 5, so we are chugging right along. Again, if you have any questions, you need to get in contact with me. I will actually be on campus tomorrow doing some things, but please reach out to me. I can FaceTime, text. I was texting with a student today. Thank you for reaching out to me. You know who you are. And if you have questions about the grade book, I think I'm pretty caught up on the grade book. Once the midterms come in, I will get those up and posted. Remember, your score builds. So as your discussion are worth 3 points, your homework is worth 6 points. You can see your score building up to 100, right? Once the midterm comes in, each of those, so it builds your score each week, closer and closer to 100. So if you're completing your assignments on time, or by the time limit, and you are, putting in a decent effort, you get full credit for those. So you'll get the full 6 out of 6 points for homework 1 and 2. You get the full 6 points, right, for each homework. So that's how that works, right? And you have 42%, so 42 points of your 100 grade is just turning in your homework. So if you turn in your homework and you put in, the basic effort, and you answer the questions in a basic manner, even at the minimum level, you get full credit, right? So it's really about answering the questions and turning things in on time. You get those full 42 points, right? And the same with the discussion. I believe I have 4 discussions, and they are 3 points each, so there's another 12 points right there. So those types of things, that's how your grade builds. Okay, have a wonderful afternoon, and I will get back at you later in the week to remind you about your midterm being due on Friday.